Welcome, everyone, to the Union Federation podcast here on the Fandom Podcast Network, where we discuss both Star Trek and the Orville. I'm Kevin. I'm going to be your captain, and I just want to let you guys know I'm on my apology tour right now. I'm going to go live soon. Please give me some upvotes, because if I hit 10 million downvotes, you know what happens. So please help me out here. I'm very, very sorry. It might have been inebriated. So anyway, please help me not get to 10 million downvotes. I need help. Anyway, let me get the rest of my crew here for this special episode of Union Federation. And of course, with us always, the founder of the BQN, and of course, our first officer and counselor, Miss Amy Nelson. How are you?
Well, hello. Let me upvote you. Thank you for that wonderful welcome.
Yeah, check it out. I got my upvote, downvote pin right there. Look at that.
I know. I love it. Love it.
All right. Next with me, of course, always is a co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network. He's downvoted me a couple of times. You got to have to talk about that. Please welcome my co-captain and security weapons officer, Mr. Kyle Wagner.
Well, unlike Borders, who promised he'd come through, I don't see any pretzels or snacks here anywhere around the podcast. So I'm sorry, Kevin. I'm going to have to downvote you.
Dang you! I don't know if you can see it, but it actually lights up. I don't know if you guys could tell. So there you go. Yeah. It's part of my Orville. I have an Orville costume group. We started out of Dragon Con a while ago, and some guy came up with a cool upvote, downvote badges. So I'm wearing mine right now. Okay, guys, this is, of course, the Union Federation podcast, and we are doing the Orville crew profile. And of course, this week we are doing Lieutenant Commander John Lamar, played by Jay Lee. This is episode 211 of the Union Federation here on the Fandom Podcast Network, and of course, the BQN. Love Orville. It's good to get back talking to it here. And this is a 10-episode limited series discussing our crew members, the main crew members, of course, of the Orville. And the 10th episode is going to be a lot of fun because we're going to talk about all of the guest stars and, super secret guest stars too, and a lot of other admirals. And it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that. But we are talking about John Lamar. And previously on Union Federation, we, of course, our first episode, we talked about Lieutenant Alara Katan, played by Halston Sage, and Lieutenant Tala Kiali was the last episode, played by Jessica Zor. And we recently also did our spoiler review and discussion podcast on Star Trek Section 31, the most recent film released on Paramount Plus. And last year we had a lot of fun. We discussed season 5 and the final season of Lower Decks. We also returned to TNG, Star Trek that is, Next Generation, where we discuss every 2-part episode. And yes, I see it. Here we are, Orville and Star Trek here on the Union Federation podcast. But let's go ahead and hit our first Orville shuttle mission. All right. We, of course, are talking about Lieutenant Commander. Yes, he got a promotion. We'll be talking about that. John Lamar, played by Jay Lee. And we'll start off with a little bit of information I found, of course, on Orville Fandom Wiki about John. John Lamar is a human officer aboard the USS Orville. He was born and raised on a colony world of the Planetary Union and later enrolled at Union Point as a cadet, where he excelled academically. John served the Orville as lieutenant navigator under Captain George Griffith and later Captain Ed Mercer. Ed eventually promoted him to lieutenant commander and chief engineer in early 2420, replacing Steve Newton. While most of the crew knew him as his casual demeanor and active dating life, John was one of the most intelligent and creative officers on the ship, a secret he guarded closely. His personal life, John was widely considered a guru in romance by the crew, advising both Gordon and Isaac on dating. Remember, more zippers is better. In 2419, John dated a female Carabex, an alien with 2 heads. He dated both women at the same time while managing to avoid each head finding out about the other. Quote, it'd still be going on, John later recalled, but the left head always wanted to go hiking, and that's just sort of a deal breaker for me. In 2420 of April, John began seeing his senior officer, Ensign Jenny Turco, for late night sexual fun and marijuana. His ongoing relationship with Jenny became an open question by December, with some officers believing the two were dating, though Jenny and John were themselves unsure. And as we know later on in 2422, John began seeing Tala Kiali. Although the two had deep and passionate relationship, Tala's Zelane's strength caused John several injuries, ultimately leading them to abort the romance. Let's stop there, Kyle. What are your thoughts?
Just a few ouchies for John with Talia. I'm just saying. He kept Dr. Finn pretty busy while he was in that relationship. John has always been kind of, in ways, kind of felt like an elder statesman on the Orville, even in the early seasons. Like he was just like he had more life experience than a lot of the rest of the crew did, and it kind of reflected, I think, in ways that they would, in the conversations the crew would have with him. But he obviously did find kind of his right hand man with Malloy, at least in the first season, and made for some comedic gold as well.
It's true. Your thoughts, first thoughts on John there, Amy?
Yeah, he's one of those guys that truly doesn't care what other people think of him. He's your lighthearted, cracking jokes, but yet does his job well, but doesn't push himself. And this casual dating, he's sort of the player on the ship because he's the good looking guy and has all these, different girlfriends. So we really tell a lot about him, but there's no malice or like he's not grumpy. He's just a well-rounded, fun guy.
Kyle.
I also want to throw a little hot take about John before we go much further. No character had more growth from season 1 to season 3 than John Lamar.
Interesting. You might have a point there. Yeah. It's interesting too, is I think he had a certain kinship with Malloy, because Malloy obviously likes to joke around and relax, and that John Lamar and him hit it off right away, which I thought was great. And they were buddies and getting into shenanigans, of course, which we'll talk about coming up in this episode. But I felt, we learned from Lamar that he's been hiding this academic secret, which we'll get into, which I thought was very fascinating and kind of a smart thing to give this character to chew on a much more interesting, life. So I think that, I think Lamar obviously is if that's your hot take, Kyle, his buddy Malloy will have to discuss that if he had any character growth going.
Oh, they all had character growth, but I think from where he started in season 1 to where he finished in season 3, he made the biggest jump.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and get into the Admiral's Log episode synopsis. And the first episode that we're going to be talking about is season 1, episode 7, Majority Rule, hence my Majority Rules badge that I'm wearing right here. Amy, go ahead and give us the Admiral's Log episode synopsis for Majority Rules.
Grayson and an undercover team land on Sargas 4, a planet with similar culture to 21st century Earth. While searching for 2 missing anthropologists, they discover that Sargas 4 practices absolute democracy, where citizens decide everything by majority vote, even information already accepted as truth. Lamar is arrested after what is considered inappropriate public behavior. He receives more than 1 million downvotes by viewers watching a television clip. Lamar must persuade the public to pardon him or else be subjected to treatment. Meanwhile, Alara and Claire locate one missing anthropologist who is in an irreversible lobotomized state after being sentenced by public opinion for a minor incident. With Lamar facing a final vote to determine his guilt, Mercer takes Lysella, a Sargas 4 inhabitant, aboard the Orville after she witnesses Alara's true appearance. She explains that the master feed works by the public watching film footage and then mass voting on it. Isaac hacks into the planet system and uploads doctored images of Lamar. The vote narrowly passes in his favor. Lamar and the crew return to the ship and depart. Lysella decides against taking part in a public vote, contemplating the Orville crew's advice about the difference between opinion and knowledge.
All right. Well, I got some interesting trivia before we start our discussion here. And Kyle, I know you'll remember this. For the first bit of trivia that we have here, if you want to, you can go ahead and read it because I
Yeah,
think you might have been the one that told me about this other episode.
yeah. It's funny because we go back to the early days of Discoville, and actually one of our earliest episodes was a Black Mirror episode because they kind of did a Star Trek related thing, which they are doing a new episode based off of that. So I have a feeling that Union Fed might be diving back into Black Mirror. But they had an episode starring Bryce Dallas Howard called Nosedive, which came out in 2016, in which your social rating determines your societal value. In both, certain establishments will refuse service if you have a low enough rating. However, the script for Majority Rule was submitted before Nosedive aired, so accusations of plagiarism are meaningless. Similar plots with technological settings in fiction and nonfiction go back to at least the days of ancient Greece.
This, of course, this was a really good episode of Black Mirror. Bryce Dallas Howard, of course, is the daughter of Ron Howard, director and actor Ron Howard, of course, from Happy Days. And she's also gone on and had a quite good directing careers, of course, in the Star Wars world. But this is a really good episode of someone who's a socialite who's at the top of her game, and bad stuff just starts to happen. And so you can see why that mirrors this episode. So there you go. All right, Amy, you want to hit us up with you like that? You want to hit us up with the next bit of trivia?
Yeah, so if you remember from Command Performance, Gordon admonished Alara for initially not defying Admiral Tucker's orders and going to rescue Ed and Kelly, saying that were the situations reversed, Ed would have gone to rescue her. Here, Ed is ordered by Admiral Tucker not to extract John and obey the order, proving Gordon's earlier assessment to be mistaken.
Okay. I don't know if you guys remember, but when I brought that up in that episode when we were talking about her character, it's always a non Admiral Halsey admiral that tells him not to go get your crew members. There is something going on with this. I'm just going to mention. So yeah.
All right.
I just want to throw some. I think there's also too when you talk about that, there's a big difference in the societies themselves, and that I think that's also a reason why that Ed may have taken a different approach compared to what Alara did.
Just true. Yeah, definitely. Okay, the next bit of trivia I'll read off here. And this actually is mentioned in the episode when there's the discussion between Kelly and Ed. And no, I'm sorry, wrong episode. I'll come back to that later. Sorry. This one is talking about publicly shamed. The episode was inspired by Ron Johnson's book, So You're Publicly Shamed. Quote, "You have been publicly shamed by Ron Johnson" is a 2015 book that explores the impact of online shaming and its historical roots. The book examines how social media has made public shaming a modern phenomenon and how it can have psychological and societal effects. I did not know this book was out there, but yeah, there it is. Yeah, so there you go. Now, I did want to mention before we talk about the episode, our notable guest stars here. Of course, we have Georgia Wiggum as Lysella. We have Stephen Culp as Wilkes. He's the lawyerish
apology tour guide
or director, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Ron Canada as Admiral Tucker. And by the way, Georgia Wiggum does have ties to Seth MacFarlane, because she played one of the main characters in the TV series Ted, which actually just wrapped up its second season. So, yes, Kyle, you had something you want to say?
You actually brought it up. I was just going to say she has been officially indoctrinated into the greater Seth MacFarlane universe with being a part of Ted.
So let's talk about Majority Rule here, guys. I remember when we first saw this, it was interesting, and it kind of takes what's happening nowadays in real life about online bullying as well. But this kind of takes the literally majority role type of thing here, unchecked, and all it takes is a press of a button to say, that person didn't deserve it, and then you see what happens when someone reaches 10 million downvotes. It's not good. You're lobotomized, basically. Amy, I want to start with you. Your thoughts on this episode and why it's good to target Lamar with this one.
Well, we definitely see with being so early in season 1, sort of the silliness that I was referring to, and his just general happy good mood. So they come down to the planet and he's talking with Alara about her dating life and such as it is or is not. And like so it's just showing that he has such a good relationship with the crew, with everyone that he works with. And he's very gets up on that statue and starts dancing, very provocatively. And you see all the phones come out, and it's like, yeah, this is exactly what would happen in nowadays. So, but for John to, I think he could have done better playing it off. He didn't seem to want to try to fit in. Which was weird, but shows his progression, especially when we talk about him later on. But yeah.
When you say not wanting to fit in, what do you mean? Like he didn't want to go with the program with the apology tour, or what do you mean?
Yeah, he did not even register that here could this statue, they revered it. He didn't put himself in their position. And that was for first contact and a union officer. I felt that was a little iffy, but it goes to, sort of help his character, especially grow, later down when we talk about that.
Yeah. And it came to the point to where when he finally realized what happens when you reach 10 million downvotes, and then he's like, no, man, I'm a spaceman. Get me out of here.
Yeah.
But the other thing too, I thought was interesting, and Kyle, I'll get to you in a second here, was like, and the apology tour promotional guy, whatever, I'm just going to call him a lawyer, didn't think to like talk to him why you shouldn't have done it on that statue and why that statue was important. That was kind of crucial there. Kyle, your thoughts on this episode tying it to Lamar?
So obviously, I think this is where when we talk this episode, when we talk the next episode, we see the two sides of Lamar. We see this in this episode. We do see the silly, more carefree, going for the laugh, having fun. But here's what I think is the interesting thing with this particular episode, because they are in a society that is culturally very similar to Earth at a certain time. You almost feel like maybe they kind of slipped into a comfort level, and that's why he did that, because he was kind of in something of a comfort level instead of in that like first contact, gotta be aware of my situation mode, and he kind of just slipped into it because he was with his friends. They were on this planet that was similar to things they had read about, so he let his guard down a little bit and just let himself be what he is, which can be a little bit of a goofball at times, and clowning around and having a little fun, and also trying to have a little, maybe even cheer up Alara a little bit with her dating woes. But I think what's interesting here, and I think it's kind of a little bit underscored, was how when he found out the truth and he was panicked about it, but yet he still refused to play in the system because he thought it was so wrong. He thought it was so ridiculous and so wrong that he refused to play the game. And in that, you're standing up for what you believe in, but you also then the reality really hits him of his situation, and it changes his attitude a bit again. And I think that there's more to this episode than just Lamar being a goofball. I think there's really a lot stronger things as far as his beliefs that we see in here, and things he's going to stand up for because he thinks it's ridiculous and he thinks it's wrong. And it's understated because it's a little bit in the background to what's going on with the upvote, downvote. But I think there's really something to be said about that. And I really think there's a little bit more than just what we see on the cover story for Lamar within this episode.
Those are good points, Kyle. When I'm looking at this picture, if you're watching on YouTube here, you can see when people start to recognize that he is the one that was on the video doing the suggestive dance with the statue. And you can see one of the phones here that one of the I guess extras is using. And I'm wondering if they made these like phone cases for everyone's personal like iPhones and whatever, and they said you can just slide it in here and then actually use it. But I'm wondering if those phones in this particular planet, if they were like the equivalent to like the iPhone 11, maybe. I don't know. Just kind of wondering.
Yeah, that'd be about timing wise.
And I did want to showcase, by the way, real quick, the badge that I have on right here. And what was when I did have to mention this too. Like here's the one that doesn't light up here, right? And they actually have the numbers on there.
Oh, wow.
This one has 118 down votes, 118,000, and then 206 green up votes there. And what's so funny is when I wore this as my Orville costume, and then I actually just wore it with my regular clothes, I had people coming up going like, hold on, hitting the up or down and having fun with it. It was a lot of fun. People, you got your Orville fans coming out of the woodwork with it. It was great.
Nice.
Yeah. So that, and it's interesting too, because it says a lot about this particular episode and that how it struck a chord with fans as well. So, all right, guys, well, let's go ahead and get into the next episode here. We already went through the trivia here. Let's get into the Admiral's log for New Dimensions. So this is season 1, episode 11, New Dimensions. Excuse me. This is season 2.
There you go.
Yeah, season 2, episode 11 of New Dimensions here. Amy, go ahead and hit us with the Admiral's log episode synopsis.
All right. Well, the Orville gets damaged by a spatial anomaly causing harrowing effects to all living things. With Lieutenant Newton leaving the Orville, Mercer must find a new chief engineer. Although Yaphet is next in line for the position, Commander Grayson discovers that Lamar has been concealing his intellectual gifts, stemming from him wanting to be accepted by his childhood peers while growing up. Grayson convinces Mercer to assign Lamar to lead an engineering team assignment in order to evaluate him as a candidate. When Mercer learns that Grayson similarly advocated for Admiral Halsey to consider him for the Orville's captaincy, he becomes racked with doubt and resentment. Grayson insists that he received the promotion on merit alone. Halsey confirms that Mercer's performance has borne this out. Meanwhile, the Orville encounters a thief with a cache of plasma rifles stolen from the Krill. He is killed when he passes into a region of two-dimensional space. To elude the Krill pursuers, the Orville takes refuge in that region. When the protective quantum bubble around the ship begins to fail, Lamar rises to the occasion and he and Yaphet help the ship escape the realm. Lamar is made chief engineer and promoted to the rank of lieutenant commander.
There we go. All right, let's first of all get into some trivia. And Amy, why don't you go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, so recurring guest star Larry Joe Campbell's final appearance as chief engineer Steve Newton. His duties are handed over to series regular Jay Lee as John Lamar. Seth MacFarlane's main reason for writing the episode was to give Jay Lee something more to do.
There you go.
Well warranted.
Kyle, hit us up with trivia number 2, please.
Lieutenant John Lamar is promoted to the rank of lieutenant commander, the first cast member of the series to receive an on-screen promotion since Ed was made a captain in Old Wounds.
There we go. And the last bit of trivia we have here is, and this is what I meant to say, this was actually referenced in the episode when Kelly and Ed were talking, and Ed is still kind of feeling bad about learning the news that she was the one that went to Halsey and said, let's give him another chance. And he's having some issues, and she's basically saying you're being an ass. But he mentions this book. It says, directly references Edwin A. Abbott's 1884 Flatland, in which the conceit of a literally two-dimensional society was first mooted. So that book is actually out there. Have the original cover there on the left if you're watching the video on YouTube, and then one of the more recent ones here, stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of cool.
It's an excellent book and movie.
There's a movie?
Yeah, Martin Sheen is the narrator or one of the voices in there. Yeah.
Oh, I got to check that out. You have me intrigued. Sounds cool. So, of course, the guests that we have here, of course, we have Victor Garber, Admiral Halsey. By the way, not telling anyone to not rescue their team members. Larry Joe Campbell is Steve Newton. Of course, we have Norm Macdonald, rest in peace, does the voice of Yaphet. And we, of course, have Mike Henry as Dan. So let's go ahead and get into the episode discussion of here. Why this is a good Lamar episode. I think it's pretty obvious, Amy.
Oh, yes, most definitely. He really steps up to the plate and really has to explain a lot to Grayson, like why he was hiding his intelligence. And so we get this beautiful backstory of how he grew up and that he would get picked on if he was
Yeah.
the know-it-all. And so to fit in, I mean, it's easier to dumb down. It's hard to smart up. Right. So he took the easy road and wanted to be liked more, which goes back to what we saw in Majority Rule, where he gets along great with all of his crewmates. And so we still see him at the beginning with the very distasteful, and I use those words purposefully, prank on Yaphet, right?
See what you said there. Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. But so we're still getting this jokester, with the crew and even when Grayson like takes both of them in, it's like, did you think this is funny?
Yeah.
No, and of course, what's the pilot? What's his name?
Gordon.
Malloy.
Malloy. Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, I didn't think anything about it. Yeah, this is funny. And then, but we do get, where Lamar is like, yeah, I felt a little bad, So there's that little differentiation. And then we get this beautiful sort of contention that Mercer believes that Yaphet should go. And Kelly she's very adamant. And so we get to have this back and forth of, well, is he really going to step up? Because when he goes down to engineering and he starts barking at them,
Yeah.
but he tried with an opener.
Yeah.
So it's like he did have some effort of, okay, maybe I can do this. But then, Matt, he was barking a lot and just yelling at him. I was like, no, that's not how you lead. And so then you're like, well, maybe Ed is right.
That's when he does the gumball trick that he gets a
Yes.
suggestion from Malloy about you get a gumball if you open up and tell me something about yourself, So
Yeah.
You touched on something there, Amy, that I wanted to mention real quick was this is actually on a side level, this is actually a good Kelly episode too, because she really has to kind of, when it comes to fruition, that she was the one that went to Halsey to recommend Ed, because she also felt bad about what she did, but that, she believed in him and she calls him out for being an ass. But then on the side of it, there's that really nice scene in her office when Lamar is there and she's asking him, like, as you mentioned, why you hit it. And he goes on saying, well, I didn't want to be picked. I didn't want to be zeroed out, or I didn't want to be, I just wanted to be one of the guys, basically. But he says, I just want to work hard. I want to come home, drink a beer and pass out. Right.
Yeah.
And that he enjoys that lifestyle. And I like how she says, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I really think that you should, she doesn't say you need, but you should really, strive to be more because you have the aptitude, and then she says, I'm going to give you command, blah, blah, blah. You can just see him like, oh, this sucks, and he's also really nervous about it. Like before he walks into engineering, I like where he's kind of like going back and forth, kind of like the way Alara was before she went back out while she was giving command of the bridge before she went back out. Like that.
That's right.
Yeah. But so it was a really nice couple of moments here. Kyle, your thoughts on this episode regarding Lamar?
I think the big thing is again, it's probably, as far as episodes of leaping Lamar up, this is the big one, obviously. What I think is so interesting with how the approach they took with this is he acknowledges his intelligence and he's just like, and he just wants to fit in. And what I think you realize is he was in such an environment as a child growing up that he became so accustomed to that when he finally got into a place where he could have been more himself, he didn't know how to be. And I think it took Kelly pushing him and then really, you see it even throughout the episode as he starts off on kind of shaky ground because he doesn't know how to deal with the people. And then you have later in the episode when Yaphet, who's just been an ass to him because of the whole situation, because Yaphet thinks he should get the promotion, he sits there and defends Yaphet when the rest of the engineering team is just
good call. I love that scene. That was a good call.
Yeah.
I was the one that made the decision. Blah blah blah. Yeah,
yeah. And there's a little moment in there too, because he's had this couple conversations with Isaac, and Isaac's kind of downplayed him a little bit, but you kind of see Isaac kind of just watching that, and you know, there's nothing facial to watch with Isaac, but just a little bit of body language, or like Isaac's going, you kind of feel like Isaac's looking at him going, you're more for this than what you realize. Right. And then of course he has the great conversation with Ed in the shuttle while they're towing the Orville through this amazing looking 2-dimensional.
Let's just call it what it is, Kyle. It's Tron World.
Yeah, Tron World, basically. And you see where Ed really gets his appreciation for Lamar, doesn't see him as just a jokester, and sees his ability and sees his natural leadership ability start coming out throughout this episode. And it's like, you know, sometimes it's one of those things where when somebody realizes they're in an environment that it's okay to be allowed to grow and be more themselves. And once they finally realize that, they can blossom quickly. And I think in Lamar's case, that's what we saw happen, because he obviously also we've seen it a few times in earlier episodes, but he obviously enjoys the engineering aspect. He enjoyed the science aspect. And you could really see it in him when he figures out that it's a door and it's more of a door than it is something else with like just an anomaly. And you see it as his comfort level gets more, as the situation gets more and more complicated, and he just falls right into place. And then Ed showing his trust in Lamar at the end really solidifies everything. And then you see it at the end of the episode when he's like, okay, let's get this engine up to 97% before the end of the week, and then we can all leave early Friday and get wasted. So he's still got that attitude, but he's also adopting the challenge that's been put before him and letting his true nature show completely, not just this kind of dorky, jokey, oh, I'm lazy side. He's starting to embrace the challenge that's been placed before him.
Yeah. Amy.
Well, I think this episode does really good in highlighting also his intelligence, and because that's a part of the storyline as well. And they do really good to pair him up with Isaac, who is the smartest of the group, right? And
did you notice how he calls Isaac out on like making fun of the kids and calling the kids feeble? He's like, why don't you just give him a wedgie?
Yeah. You know, so yeah, he's got that. I can be social. I know how to, interact. And compared to Isaac, man, he's, the nice guy. And then Isaac comes up with the idea to get the Orville encased, so that they can enter the 2-dimensional space. So that's one for Isaac. But then it was Lamar who said, we can get a tractor to pull the Orville out. Yeah. And that was
the shuttle.
Yeah. And Isaac didn't come up with that. That was his pure intelligence stepping up. And I think it was that where Mercer was like, okay, we might need to work on the, leadership, but the smarts and the people skills are pretty good.
So I'm gonna jump off from what you just said there, Amy, because what I like about this episode too is that you have obviously what's happening with Lamar, and he's struggling with it, but you also have the little B story where you have Mercer now feeling like questioning everything that he's done, because he learns that it was his ex-wife that went to Admiral Halsey saying hey, give him a shot, and he's having issues with this, of course. But what I like about the end of this episode is that he volunteers for the dangerous shuttle mission to pilot the shuttle when Kelly says, no, wait a minute, you can't do that. He's like, I need to do this. It's like he's trying to prove to him that he is a good enough captain to do something like that, to taking this volunteering for this dangerous mission, while also you have Lamar, saying he's kind of struggling with a similar thing. And what I love the fact that they both come together, they come out of the danger, and then, as you alluded to, Ed's like, that's amazing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to make you my chief engineer. And of course, the funny scene where they all have the bloody noses and stuff like that. That was pretty good. But yeah, so yeah.
Yeah. And still going off that one, the thing that I do like is the turnaround with Yaphet. Because, yeah, he is a little frustrated because he's next in line to become chief engineer.
Yep.
And so you see him like fighting against it and I should be doing this. But when they're getting the shuttle ready and Yaphet comes in the shuttle and is like, okay, what else do you need? Like, he's the worker bee. And he's now accepted that, you know, Lamar is brilliant and came up with this idea and let me help you because this is going to be amazing. And that turnaround between both Yaphet and Lamar, like you were saying, Lamar, you know, stood up for Yaphet. But Yaphet came around to him as well. And, you know, when he got the final thing, Yaphet's like, all right, let's get to work.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Yeah, they started talking about it and stuff like that. So, Kyle, did you have any other final thoughts on this episode for a good Lamar episode?
I think, like I said, it's the one that really starts the full turn of Lamar into something more. And I really think from this point forward, you see Lamar just grow in leaps and bounds through this to where, you know, his experiences that happen later on when the war with the Kalon comes in and things he's doing with that and everything he does through season 3. He's thinking more and more intelligently. He's thinking more like a chief engineer, and he's also thinking more a little bit like a commander. He grows with that. He's not just the joke guy anymore, and that's just amazing growth for the character. And like I said, when you talk about the characters from that were on the Orville from the beginning to the end, I just really do feel that the Lamar character, and all of them had growth. Don't get me wrong, but I think his character really matured the most, and really grew the most throughout this show.
I can't argue with that, Kyle. And on a behind the scenes personal level too, he's friends with Seth because he had I think there was, I want to say 9 to 10 episodes of Family Guy, a reoccurring character that Jay Lee voiced. And so obviously they were friends. And I think he also did other stuff with Seth as well. And I like the fact alluded to in the trivia that he's like, you know, I need to give Jay Lee something more to do instead of just being the, you know, the party guy or the guy that gets all the dates, you know, and stuff like that. And I think that was a really smart move because what we've seen from him going on past this thing as the chief engineer has been really, really cool. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead. Of course, this is the Orville crew profile. We're talking about Lieutenant Commander, now just promoted Lieutenant Commander John Lamar, played by Jay Lee. It's episode 211 of Union Federation. Let's go ahead and hit our next Orville shuttle mission. So this is where we're going to talk about the actor himself, a little bit of information on Jay Lee here. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, or if you're from there, it's Missouri. Jay Lee, of course, is an actor, writer, producer, musician, and director. He began classical piano lessons at the age of 3 and eventually went on to receive a music scholarship at Indiana University's renowned Jacobs School of Music. After graduating in 2005 with a Bachelor of Arts in Piano Performance and Theater and Drama, Jay Lee took the last $200 he had and headed west for Los Angeles to begin his professional entertainment career. Landed his first industry job as a receptionist for Family Guy. Then he went into vocal, eventually becoming a writer for The Cleveland Show. He also is an accomplished pianist. He performed at Carnegie Hall at age 12. Talk about a guy with you know, stats.
Renaissance man. Renaissance man.
He is the first place winner of the Dubois National Piano Competition, a 3-time winner at the Beethoven Artist Festival, and 2-time bronze medal winner of the American Music Scholarship Association World Piano Competition. Moved out of Los Angeles, of course, with that $200 and slept in his car and saved enough till he moved in an apartment. He's an avid basketball player. Had a tryout with the USBL before moving to Los Angeles. So there is John Lamar. So we have 3 topics we want to talk about. I didn't know if you guys had any comments on his personal life, Amy.
Yeah, is he married? Why am I not seeing a wife in there? Look at he's just so handsome
He
and
is. He's a
plays the
good-looking guy.
piano. Like, come on now. Multi-talented.
He's
Yeah.
crushing on Jaylee. All right, so let's go ahead and how their character moments tie into the Orville universe as a whole. Kyle, I want to start with you on this.
I think the interesting thing with Lamar was how his interactions with the crew changed as he went through. Because he obviously in the early scenes he was really paired up with Malloy, kind of the two practical jokers, and they still play that up through the season. But as he gets into the chief engineer position, you see him a lot more with Isaac. And especially the aspect of Isaac trying to figure out everything with Claire, everything he goes through with the Kalons and everything like that. And he kind of stands by Isaac through all of that when a lot of people turned on him. And you just see his character growth throughout it. And you don't see him later on. He's kind of more, you see him more a little bit more with the captain and with Kelly and that. But in the earlier parts of his character development, you see him with more with Malloy and Bortus and those characters having the often. He's kind of the character that really, as he grows, he changes in his. I don't want to say his friendship values, but just in how he associates with the crew. And I think it's one of the more interesting things because he gets more maturity. Doesn't mean he's not still friends with Malloy, but he changes some there. And and especially when you look at the relationships he had, like his relationship with Talia, which was very intentional, very adult. And if it just wasn't for a little Zaylan strength loss of control, maybe who knows? But they actually played on that up for a while when they did that, even after they broke up. That there was still this chemistry and tension between them after the fact, and they played that up in a few episodes. But I think he, as far as just his tie into the Orville universe as a whole, I think he was a character that a lot of people could relate to early, and then understand what, and then have a feeling of pride seeing him grow as the character he became.
Good stuff there, Kyle. Amy, talk about Lamar and his tie into the Orville universe as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's really important because of his intelligence and how he understands the universe that they're flying through and the quantum physics and dynamics and, all that technobabble, as we say. And he is finding ways to work around this. I mean, I really do love that New Dimension episode where he's, figuring out, okay, let's get us protected and we can still use these three-dimensional things if we have this quantum bubble. I don't know the correct words, but you understand me. Hopefully.
Technobabble.
Yes, but he's definitely, because he has this innate sense of what it is, this universe, and I really am in awe of it. And his jokester with the crew, I think, just makes him that much more endearing because he's not being the smart know-it-all, say like on Sheldon on Big Bang Theory, where he's annoying. Like, here is this intelligent, extremely smart guy, and he's not annoying. So it's like, love him even more. So I think he definitely adds to the whole thing overall.
You touched on something that I think is really important for his character. And, one of the things that we've heard Kelly say this more than once. And I think it was in the previous episode too, Majority Roles, where obviously currency is not a thing anymore, but it's reputation is what's important here. And what I can see going forward too is that his reputation for not just his mind, but obviously an easygoing guy, but also this fantastic, chief engineer, I think is something that reputation wise, where he would normally in the past, he'd want to kind of stay underneath the radar. I think he has a lot to offer here. And I think that we see a lot more of that later. And I have some other stuff I want to talk about like in the future and stuff, but I think that he becomes not like he wasn't respected before, but I think he becomes a more respected crew member because of what he can do and what he's shown, all this aptitude that he's been hiding and stuff. So on top of that, you kind of touched on a little bit, Kyle, is the relationship to the rest of the Orville crew. Let's get into that right now, and I'll start it off. Obviously, he bonds with Malloy right away, which I think is great. Those two have some wonderful, funny moments, especially since they're working together up at the front. He's the navigator, and then Malloy's the pilot. And then, of course, he has some romantic moments with with Turco, and then later Alara and stuff like that. And Dan's one of the guys too. I love Dan. Dan's kind of funny. But I want to kind of get your guys' thoughts on the relationship with the rest of the Orville crew, because one thing I wanted to mention about this episode was I like the scene when Kelly has to try to convince, like when she first mentions it, about letting Lamar have a chance at the position of chief engineer, and he almost and Ed almost spits up water, saying, "Boy, that's a hard sell," And then eventually we see what happens. But regarding the relationship to the crew, let's start with you, Amy. What are your thoughts on Lamar?
Yeah, I love his interaction with Kelly Grayson. How, especially in like New Dimension, where she's pushing him and he's begrudgingly, "Oh, fine, I'll do it. I'm going to follow orders." And then sort of, "Oh, okay, yeah, I like it." So I really feel the respect there, and especially with Mercer as well. And like you said, Malloy, they are chopping off legs, putting Yaffa in the buffet, So that camaraderie is good. But I do like later on, I'm sure we'll talk about it with Malloy, like when Malloy gets into a serious relationship and the zippers and, he's but he's a good friend. Lamar,
and then when he gives love advice to Isaac,
Yes.
which is is a funny turn.
yes.
And then that one episode where Claire doesn't quite appreciates that, and she goes down and chews his head off in front of everyone.
Yeah. But I mean, even down to Claire's kids, and the kids join him. And it was the kids who pointed out the dead plant because there was nothing else that was wrong in that
Right.
quarters, and he has a good, and can tolerate kids, unlike, Picard. I don't like kids, he just gets along with everyone. And I will say the one relationship that I would like to see more is him and Bortus. I don't see them together a lot.
Okay. Kyle, your thoughts on Lamar and the relationship to the rest of the Orville crew?
Again, I go back, and again, this is the New Dimensions is the turning point for it, because when Kelly finds out his aptitude scores, because it's kind of funny that when you think about it, that they didn't know already, but because it kind of just shows how the crew, especially the captaincy and the higher end thought of him. They liked him. He was a fun guy, but they didn't think much of him until she found out and realized, oh my God, there's so much untapped potential here, and getting that push and then gaining more respect, I think, from the bridge crew and the crew itself as he goes along in that position. It's well written. It's handled. It's acted and performed great by Jay Lee as Lamar throughout this, and we see how he becomes integral to the Orville crew. It's Geordi. I mean, it's Geordi moving up from being on the bridge at a navigator to becoming chief engineer. I mean, that's the parallel there. But it's kind of the same thing. It's the difference being we had respect for Geordi before going in, but we with Lamar, it's wow. We really couldn't see this character becoming this from the start of the show to what he becomes at the end of it.
Yeah, that's a good call. Okay, this last question is a fun one here. If we had more episodes with this character, please let there be a season 4. Please let there be a season 4. Where would you like to see their story arc go? I'll start here, if you don't mind, because we kind of touched on Jay Lee's talent at piano. I want to see this come into play because obviously we've seen Kelly sing, but more importantly, we've seen Malloy sing and play guitar. I would love Malloy and John Lamar to maybe start a band and have a fun little moment there, or Kelly can come in and sing too. I want to see that talent. If you're a piano champion, how do you not write that into the character growth? Yes, he's a ladies' man. We get that. But I would kind of like to see him. I'd love the scenes with Tala, and I was kind of disappointed that, he had to like go through broken bones and stuff like that to realize maybe I shouldn't be having sexual intercourse with a Zelayan. Maybe that's Tala's problem. I don't know. But I would like to see him kind of have another relationship instead of just always be the ladies' man. It has served its purpose with a lot of funny moments, and I think it's great. Maybe he goes back to Turco and they strike up something or something. I don't know. But I just wanted to start that off. That's what I would like to see. Kyle.
So there's a couple different ways we can go about this. I'm like you, Kevin, but I would really like to see them revisit the relationship with Talia. I think there's a lot more. Yeah. There's a lot of untapped potential.
I mean,
there.
Come on, Tala, calm down. I mean,
But I would like to see him get the chance to be in the captain's role. We kind of where he has to take over. Maybe Ed and Kelly are off ship, or Borges gets injured or something like that, and he's forced to be
like temporary,
control,
like a temporary
captain. Right? Because I just think it would be such a natural progression for the character,
right?
And really kind of like that ultimate moment of growth. Like he's in charge of everything now,
right?
And
right.
how see that character growth moment there. And I think the opposite side, and they played this up on the Orville a couple times with a couple different characters. I'd love to see him go back home where they kind of saw him as this little goofball kid and see what he's grown into and how he would act when he got back home. Would he go back to hiding who he is for the people at home, or would he see him and react differently to what he is now? I think that would be intriguing as well.
So there's a reason why we always go to Amy last on this question here, because she likes to hear what we have to say first.
Yeah.
Because then it gets her creative, futuristic, fortune-telling juices going here. So, Amy, if we had more episodes with Lamar, where would you like to see his story arc go?
Yeah, so I'm going off what you mentioned, Kevin, and his amazing musical talent, and then brought up everyone basically has amazing talent of the crew. So I'm seeing we need a Subspace Rhapsody, a musical next episode, right? Where they have to, or I was thinking,
oh my God, we have such the crew to start singing, doing this.
Come on. Is it really that hard to encourage Seth MacFarlane to break out in song?
We need to see Borges finish his song,
Yes, exactly. Yes.
You won't be silent.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So that needs to happen. Or something similarly. Remember in TNG where Data had to put in all the isolinear chips in the Naked Now when they were drunk and
really fast? Yeah.
Really fast. So I think Lamar needs to real fast to save something down in engineering, some warp core breach or something, where his piano skills are really his arpeggios or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I could see that. So I like that. And Kyle, I completely agree with you. Let's get him back home, because as you were talking, I was like, would his society, or would they recognize the brilliant man that he is, or would they just be like, oh, that's not for me, I'm going to go back to farming my land, because they were more hands-on. So,
and you got to think one of his parents has got to be an absolute blast. He got the comedy side and the goofball side from somewhere.
Yes,
honestly, too, on behind the scenes, I'd love to see Jay Lee direct an episode of the Orville. Because he apparently has a directing credit or so, and so I think that would be kind of cool to see that happen. So yeah. All right, guys, let's go ahead and get our final thoughts here on Lieutenant Commander John Lamar, played by Jay Lee. these episodes are a lot of fun, deep diving into Orville here and rewatching episodes. It's fun to go to these and just dissect them, but also, highlight the crew member that gets the love for this. And of course, Jay Lee as Lamar. And, as you said, Amy, he's a likable character. He gets along with everyone. But I do like seeing him shine. We see him shine later in other episodes too. Maybe not, he's not like the main character, but I know he like when Isaac commits suicide in the 3rd season, he has a role in helping bringing him back to life. That was a big deal,
Yeah.
So he has other highlights, which I think are really, really cool. But let me get your final thoughts on Lamar here as one of the crew members we are highlighting, Amy.
Yeah, this has been so fun. And mathematically, New Dimensions is just one of my all-time favorite. But we get this amazing character growth with Lamar, where we just know him to be the flippant, play it fun, always for a laugh, but friendly, nice guy. Opposite, it sort of is the comedy section for the captain's chair, right? They're going back and forth, those two. They're usually turned around. So it's really nice. So to move him down to engineering is a risk, but it really pays off because he still is connected. They're still, working together and stuff. So I really enjoy the the John Lamar character and that amazing growth and he gets a growth in his rank as well. So we get to see him grow professionally and, as a person get maturing.
And you just reminded me of something that's important to note here, Amy, was that when the Orville came back for season 3, aka New Horizons, the Orville got a new set dressing. You notice the bridge is a little bit different, but they really went all out on the new look of the engineering. And they I guess the Orville goes through like some type of retrofit or something like that and gets beefed up a little bit. But you notice the engineering set is lot more like bigger and it's really, really cool looking. So they got to showcase a lot of really cool scenes in that thing as well. It was also an area where Isaac hung out around as well. It kind of reminded me of like the astrophysics room that they added to the Enterprise later on in the movies and stuff like that. So that was kind of cool. Kyle, your final thoughts on the Orville Lieutenant Commander John Lamar?
To be honest with you, I think John Lamar it turned out to be one of my favorite characters in the series. Jay Lee's immensely talented. I wish he would do more. I mean, as far as just acting in opportunities, I think what he did with the Lamar character has been outstanding. I think the great thing about it was they matured the character, improved the character, and still kept him fun too. Kept a fun aspect to Lamar, and I think that was really important. They grew him, but they didn't take the fun out of him, and I think that's so great. And again, I just think Jay Lee needs to do more because the man is immensely talented, and I'd like to see him do a lot more. But again, this goes back to why the Orville is the quality show that it is, because every character is handled with care and love and really intelligent writing. And I think Lamar in this case was one of the best.
Yeah, good call. Yep. All right, guys, this is the Union Federation podcast, and we are not done yet. The next episode, 212 of Union Federation, is we're going to be doing our crew profile on Lieutenant Gordon Malloy, played by Scott Grimes. This is one I'm actually been looking forward to doing. And the 2 episodes that we're going to be discussing, Kyle, do you want to say something? I noticed.
I just wanted to say something about Scott Grimes real quick, because I truly believe Scott Grimes might be one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood. You never hear anybody say anything bad about Scott Grimes. He's had a very long, kind of under the radar career, going back to Critters and a lot of stuff. A long run on ER, the Orville, his relationship with Seth. And people are so appreciative of his amazing musical talent. I think Scott Grimes is one of the more underrated, loved guys in Hollywood.
Well, save some of that for the episode, Kyle.
Yeah, wow.
I want to get that out there, get people thinking a little bit.
I gotcha. Well, the 2 episodes that we're going to be discussing here, this is going to be fun. We're going to be discussing season 2, episode 11, Lasting Impressions, where the crew opens up that time capsule and he discovers Laura Huggins' iPhone. And then we're going to go to season 3, where he meets up with Laura Huggins in Twice in a Lifetime. The crew must rescue Gordon from a distant yet familiar world. And we do want to mention there is a honorable mention episode that is definitely worth watching here.
Yes.
And this is season 2, episode 10, Blood of Patriots. So where Ed must initiate peace talks with the Krill, but Malloy reunites with an old crewmate that saved his life in the past, but he intends on taking revenge on the Krill. So make sure you guys watch those, because we will have a brief mention of Blood of Patriots, because that was definitely a good Malloy episode. All right, guys, let's go ahead and wrap things up here. This is a Union Federation. We're discussing the Orville crew profiles, a limited 10-episode series here. This is the Fandom Podcast Network and the BQN. Amy, let us know how we can reach you and what's happening on the BQN.
Well, you can find me on YouTube right now, BQN Podcast.
Woo!
We are having our Sunday morning Star Trek talk show that is going on, a 8-week run. We started on Sunday, so find us there. That's Sundays at 9 a.m. Eastern, switch that.
If I didn't have to work on Sundays, I would totally try to be on that.
Yeah. 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. You can also listen to it as a podcast. So just search the view screen. So doing that, and you can find me on Blue Sky, again, at BQM Podcasts, or at Counselor Amy on Blue Sky.
Kyle, how can we find you, sir?
You can find me all over the place. I can't seem to get away from anything. You can find me on Facebook at Kyle Wagner. You can find me on Twitter at AKyleW. You can find me on Instagram and Threads at AKyleFandom. And you can find me on Blue Sky at AKyleW. And you can find me not cleaning the P corner this week.
Well, you can find the Union Federation podcast on Instagram. You can email us at theunionfederation@gmail.com. And we're also on X as well. Also, too, please check out our Union Federation Facebook group, too. We got a lot of fun people in there, including all of us talking Orville and Star Trek. So make sure you check that out as well. My name is Kevin. You can find me on X, Instagram, Threads, Discord, and Letterboxd at Spartan_Phoenix, and also on Blue Sky at Spartan Phoenix. So there we go. I want to give a quick little shout out to TeePublic, by the way, guys. I'm wearing my Union Federation t-shirt here. We have t-shirts from all of our main shows, including Union Federation. Get hats and mugs and sweatshirts and hoodies and stuff like that. If you purchase one of those, we get a little kickback. Helps us keep the Union Federation Starship running. So give us some love there. So yeah, and here we are talking about the Orville. Kyle, yes.
I just wanted to say too, Malloy brought it up in one of these episodes. We do have a cat on the bridge.
Yes, he wanted a cat.
Yes,
he wanted a bridge cat. So yeah.
So official Attack Triple Stripes. He is our bridge cat here on the Union Federation podcast, and so he keeps things calm. And I have a litter robot, so we don't even have to worry about changing the litter box.
That was so funny when Isaac started petting. Oh my gosh!
Are we bonding?
Yeah.
Well, I just want to give you guys an update. My apology tour has worked. I've been set free. I will not be lobotomized. Thank you very much for everyone for the upvotes. Appreciate that very much. Kyle, what are you doing?
I just might have uploaded some videos of you that you didn't want to get out.
Dude, come on, man. Come on. I just got exonerated. What a buddy. Well played, sir. All right, guys. Well, join us again next week here on the Union Federation podcast. We'll be discussing more Orville. As we always say, live long and prosper. And we are, without a doubt, the weirdest ship in the fleet. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you.